Hello, BookTube. I'm here with a wrap up of May and a sort of TBR, I guess you would say, for June. Um, I can't believe that we're at the end of the fifth month. um, but yeah, um, May was an okay reading. There's about a week and a half that I couldn't do anything. Almost 2 weeks actually, to be honest. But what I did read, I enjoyed. And I guess the first thing, most of these are going to be in sort of relative order of when I read them, give or take. But the first one was a read that sort of doubled up for Spring into Adventure and Horror Mayhem, and it's The Terror by Dan Simmons. And it's a fictional and supernatural accounting of Franklin's final voyage to the North in 1845. And yeah, this sort of actually, this month's book ends quite well, and we'll get to that with the last book that I finished as well. This is fabulous. Dan Simmons, so much detail, accurate detail of the sort of surroundings, and interweaving what actually the evidence that they know what happened, and like any archaeological evidence, he sort of weaved that into the story, but with fictional, motives and a lot of things like that. It's a bit of a honker. This edition was over 900 pages, but I think the hardcover was only 700 and some. So I did do a video for this. If I can remember, I'll leave links to the videos if you want more detail of the books I'm talking about here. I'm just going to briefly go through them here. So The Terror is absolutely fabulous. It was a page turner, that's for sure. And then for Sagalong, was the saga of the Volsungs. And this was put down probably in print, and during the early 1200s, based on stories that were going around orally, probably for 600 years plus. And it's basically it's similar to the Siegfried sort of saga of the Nibelungen, and the Ring Cycle, but also too Tolkien borrowed a lot of this. But it's an age old sort of type of story of a saga, of a family saga, very slim, and reads sometimes like a shopping list, but. I enjoyed it, and again, I did a video for this if you want more detail on it. Wonderful cover here. Does it actually say who did the cover? I think I probably looked that up before and I couldn't find it. Nothing jumps out, but it's just a fabulous cover there. And then also for Horror Mayhem, I did The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And that was a reread, and I thoroughly enjoyed the reread. And I used the second Norton Critical Edition. I had issues with the editor and the introduction. Again, I'll try to leave a link to my video on this below if you're interested. But it's basically, everybody knows the story. Dr. Jekyll creates an elixir that he takes, and it sort of lets out the inner animal in him, in a sense, and he becomes a different person. And it's been used and reused and abused down the ages since Robert Louis Stevenson wrote this. And this was where the month sort of started to go awry, because I wanted to read all four books of the Gene Wolfe's The Book of the New Sun. And this is volume one of the SF Masterworks by Golanz, and it reprints. It's called Shadow and Claw, but The Shadow of the Torturer and The Claw of the Conciliator. And I read the first one. It was half of this. It's like 300 pages, and I didn't get to the others, and I'm going to continue reading them. I did enjoy them. I haven't actually done a video on this. I'll probably wait until I finish them all, and then I'll do something on as a video for them. But I did enjoy it, and it's set in the far flung future, millions of years in the future. Humanity has gone to the stars, but there's still remnants on Earth, and it's a sort of almost like a feudal medieval society, and the main character is a torturer. But he talks about torture as if he's going to go out and do some gardening. Yeah, so it was interesting. He's very evocative in the scenery, and talking of sort of with a sense of history to it, and I enjoyed it, and I do want to continue. And I also read this with, or reread this with Aaron Facer. He mentioned he was going to read it, so I took a day or a day and a half to reread this. And Gustave Flaubert's Madame Bovary. This was translated by Alan Russell. It's an older translation. It's the one that I read before. I think it says 1950, so it's probably a translation from 1950. I remember liking it more the first time than I did on the reread. Yeah, there was very good parts to it. I haven't done a video on this, but yeah, yeah, it was. I could see, like, it's considered one of the, I think, the first realist novels, and you could see a lot of influence. I believe influence on Thomas Hardy for this, and for his works. It was fun, like I say, to reread. I'm not sure. I do have a newer translation, which I should have read that, but I didn't find it until after I'd finished reading this. I'm not sure I'd be up for a third read of this because, yeah, it's not one of my favorites of his. Um, and but it's still good. It's still good. Now for my Patreon book club, read Helen Berry's Orphans of Empire, the Fate of London's Foundlings. This was published in 2019. Interesting subject, but even though it's Oxford University Press, um, her writing is not the greatest for this. I understand, I can understand that there's literally mountains of evidence for this, but I found that she just was interspersing too much sort of modern day things, saying, "Oh, well, we don't think of that. They think of it that way in the 21st century." And I'm going, "Your readers are all from the 21st century. You don't need to say that. They realize that. It might be something to put in an epilogue or something like that, and do an overview and things like that of how things changed." Um, but also too, it's like she was dumbing it down. Like she's expecting the reader to be dumb, like, know nothing at all, um, and then left out other things that needed more detail or more explanation. But it was interesting of itself. But as one of my other book club patrons says, not going to go out of their way to read anything else by this author. And I feel the exact same way. Beautiful cover, though. And part of my CIMAC 2024 this month was reading Waystation. And this was published in 1963. Yep. And it was a multi-award winner. Novel. This has a nice wraparound cover to it. And this is Old Earth Books. It's a centenary edition that they did of City and Waystation, and limited to 2,000 copies. Nice hardcover edition. And yeah, it's as good as I remember it, if not better. I hadn't read it since about 2016 or 17, somewhere around there. And the last thing that I actually finished, which I did do a video on this. Oh, we will be doing a live on way station for on the 8th, I think it is. So join us there. We'll have quite a few people on to discuss way station. But the other book that I finished, as I said, it's a nice bookend with the Terror as a sort of, fateful expedition, or the final expedition, and it was Captain Cook's third and last voyage, his fatal expedition, the final fatal adventure of Captain James Cook, the Wide Wide Sea, by Hampton Sides, published this year, 2024, and I really, really enjoyed this. This was a gift by one of my subscribers, Freeman, and he's given me a number of books over the last several years, and every single one has been spot on. He knows how to choose books well for me, and this was really good. I had a few issues with it. I'll leave a link to uh, to the video for this one, and it's basically his last voyage, or the last voyage, or his expedition, but went from July 1776 to October 1880 by the time they were back. One of the longest, if not the longest, sea voyages, and if not in time, as well as in miles covered. But yeah, it was very well done. And if you have any interest in Captain Cook, it'd be great. One thing that I did forget, and that I didn't mention in my video, was that the ship, the Resolution, was a merchant schooner originally, but it was built just down the road here in Whitby, as same as the other ship that was on this expedition, the Discovery, were built at Whitby, and Captain Cook spent his youth at Whitby and learned how to be a sailor in Whitby. There's a Captain Cook museum here. I hope to be able to get to it someday. It's not very far away. It's about 20 miles down the road, down the coast. And also, too, another great connection with Whitby is Dracula. So, ooh, is Captain Cook Dracula? Ooh, or is Dracula Captain Cook? Interesting ponderings. But yeah, so that's what I read this month. That's what I finished in May. And continuing on, because of the last couple days here, I've been continuing to read Mary Kingsley's travels in West Africa. I am recording this on Thursday, so I'm still not very far through. I'm just 200 pages in of 700 and some. Enjoying it. It is a reread for me. I might have actually read an abridgment of it originally, but I can't remember. But I'm not. I did look to see if there was an abridgment, but I couldn't find one, so I must have read the original, the full thing. But yeah, it's very good. I'm enjoying it. I won't finish it this month. I'll read as far as I can until the first, and then I'll put it aside. But the TBR for June includes there's a number of things that are going on, a number of events. There's June on the Range. It's I love June on the Range, but this year, because I can't find a lot of material, I wanted to read more of dime novels that I have, Steam End of the Plains, but I will be reading the final two Clifford Simak westerns that were published late last year, I think August, so it was too late for June on the Range last year. But I wanted to read the Sacketts, or continue the Sacketts. I can't find the next two books that I wanted to read, but I do have some Zane Grey that I'll be reading, at least one and maybe more. Here's a couple here: The Lone Star Ranger and The Last Trail. And I have one other here. I think I might have a fourth somewhere, but Wildfire. So I like Zane Grey, so I'll definitely be doing one of those. I think I'll start out with this one. Lucia St. Clair Robson, Ride the Wind, and It's a story about Cynthia Park. It's a fictional story about Cynthia Parker. It's a little long for westerns. It's basically 600 pages, but anything about Cynthia Parker, Cynthia Ann Parker, I am interested. I'm there, so I'm looking forward to that. So that's probably going to be it for my June on the Range. But also, what's happening is Dune in June. Yes, Dune in June. Myself, Aaron Hook. Well, it was Aaron Hook's idea to do this, and I said yes. I need to reread Dune, and so it's been about 8 or 10 years since I read it. So yeah, Frank Herbert's 1965 masterpiece Dune, and what we're doing is we're reading it over a 3 week period. The Dune itself is split up into three books: Dune, Muad'Dib, and um, the Prophet, and some appendices, but we'll include the appendices in the third week, and then possibly the fourth week. We should at the end of the fourth week maybe discuss some of the film adaptations of the book, which I thought would be kind of nice. And we're going to do lives for these. So yeah, so Dune in June. If you're interested, then get in touch with me. I have a Voxer group for that. The Clifford Simak 2024 is continuing. This was sort of an interlope with for it because I decided I was originally going to do it every 2 months, but I've decided to put more stories in. So this is A Choice of Gods. This is the optional one. This was published uh, in 1973. It's a short one. It's not even 200 pages, 160 pages ish. Yeah, 160 pages in this edition. Not the best of covers, but yeah, we won't speak of that. And another sort of a little reading project that I'm doing with Scott Danielson, and I believe Mark at Book Time with Elvis is three. As Scott put it, we're pairing three books, and that's L. Sprague de Camp's Lest Darkness Fall, and I don't have it here with me. It's The High Crusade by Paul Anderson, and Bring the Jubilee by Ward Moore. And you can see the comparison. They're all sort of historical ones. This is um, a sort of alternate history of the American Civil War. The High Crusade has a spaceship landing in sort of the High Middle Ages in England, uh, and hilarity ensues. Well, there's a bit of humor in it, but it's interesting. And then this one is a time travel, Lest Darkness Falls. A historian goes back to ancient Rome. So yeah, so I'm looking forward to rereading these as well. Now, another thing that's happening with Arian Fowler, who is a subscriber, we read Les Miserables earlier in the year April. Yes, and I mentioned this one. I mentioned Lost Illusions by Honor de Balzac. I've read it a couple times, but I got this new translation by Raymond N. Mackenzie. And this was published by the University of Minnesota in 2020. I think it was, yeah, 2020. So I'm looking forward to reading this with Arian. And I think there's a couple other people that are sort of joining in, but I can start a Voxer group if you're interested. But yeah, it's set in Paris during the, I think, 1820s ish, of a young man who from the provincial sort of countryside, who's a poet and goes to the big lights of the big city, Paris. And then there's a sequel called Lost Souls, which I'm not sure if I've read this, but this again is translated by Raymond and Mackenzie. So yeah, so that'll be nice. It's a bit shorter than the other one. This was actually gifted to me my last birthday, yeah, not this year's birthday, but the previous one, by Sonia, or Sonia. One of those are correct. Sorry, for my birthday as a birthday gift, And I had meant to read it last year, but I got sidetracked, obviously, with moving. So I found these two, and I'm going to try to read this one as well in June. And that's sort of it that I have here. I'm not sure if I can get through all these. It is a TBR, and sometimes my TBR gets a little out of hand because sometimes I get ill and I can't continue reading. But hopefully I can get these done. So I don't think it's over ambitious, but we'll see what happens. If you're interested in reading any of these, please do get in touch. Thank you, BookTube. Happy reading.